Warning! Kinda Murdery contains adult themes, explicit language, and descriptions of violence. It is not suitable for anyone, and we recommend you stop listening now.
True crime with a dash of the paranormal, the garish, the strange, and the darkly comic. I'm Zevin Odelberg, host of Kinda Murdery, a podcast that's about more than just murder. It's my very own pocket dimension, home to a curated collection of bizarre and compelling stories, the unsolved, the unsettling, and the unbelievable. I cover it all, just so long as it's kinda murdery. Hey everybody, welcome to my very own pocket dimension. Thank you for being here. Just like it says in the intro, I am Zevin Odelberg, and this is Kinda Murdery. Hey, before we jump into the next part of our investigation into the murder of Sherry Rasmussen, entitled Take the Beemer, Leave the Body, the Bullets, and the Bite Marks, I wanted to spend just a moment to talk to you about a couple of things that I've talked about a lot in the past but haven't mentioned for a while. First off, I want Kinda Murdery to be a community where we can share our stories, where we can tell the tales about the challenges that we face in life that may be different than the challenges that other people face, that may be things that most people don't even think about, that never occurs to them. For example, I have cerebral palsy. I have various physical challenges because of that. I've spoken about them a little bit in the past. But if you are living with a disability, or someone you know or love is living with a disability and would like to share the story of their particular challenge, please feel free to reach out to the show, kindamurdery@gmail.com, @kindamurdery on all social media, or you can call the Kinda Murdery hotline, 888-MURDERY. That's 888-687-3379. And by the way, you don't have to be disabled to share your story. I want all of us to learn to be more empathetic for each other, and in order to do that, we have to feel more human and just seem more, in a sense, ordinary to each other. And so it's important when we have very different lives and experiences that we share them, so that we can recognize our common humanity and hopefully move forward to make a better world. Also, I haven't mentioned for quite a while, 988, the free 3-digit lifeline number that you can call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to receive immediate counseling for substance use, mental health, or suicidal thoughts. So, God forbid, but if you find yourself in a dark, dark place, please do call 988. Please do remember that you are loved, and the world is a better place with you in it. You can also reach out to me, although I'm not qualified to help you if you are really struggling, then you should call 988. But if you'd just like to make a connection, feel free to reach out. I'm here, I care, and I would love to connect with you. Alright, real quick before I jump into the story, I usually say this sooner, but do please take note, spoiler alert, etc., etc. This is part 2 of the story, so if you haven't heard part 1 yet, go back and listen to it, then rejoin us. We'll save you a seat. Alright, now, please join me as we uncover what truths we can and solve what mysteries we may. Kinda Murderies. Take the Beemer. Leave the Body, the Bullets, and the Bite Marks. Part 2 starts now. With the approval of Proposition 69, a ballot measure co-authored by Lisa Kahn, she was the DNA evidence early adopter in the Los Angeles DA's office, who we mentioned earlier in the story. So she co-authored a ballot measure, and when it was approved, there was a notable shift in the landscape of criminal investigations in California. The new legislation mandated the collection of DNA samples from all individuals arrested for a felony or a sex crime case, as well as from all state prison inmates convicted of such offenses. This unprecedented move resulted in the uploading of DNA profiles from tens of thousands of California inmates into the FBI's comprehensive database. Detective Lampkin's cold case unit at the LAPD found itself inundated with CODIS-based, quote, cold hits, unquote, generating reports that implicated suspects previously unknown to the detectives. The tide was turning, and the unit was unlocking the secrets of numerous unsolved cases, bringing resolution and a measure of justice to countless victims and their families. In the midst of this influx of new information, the DNA report from Jennifer Butterworth in the Sherry Rasmussen case emerged as a unique and tantalizing clue. The report suggested a potential paradigm shift in the case. The murderer might be a woman, This was an anomaly in violent crimes and stood out from the usual pattern of male perpetrators. However, despite its intriguing nature, the report did not lead directly to a specific suspect. Unlike the plethora of cold hits that were directly pointing toward potential culprits due to Proposition 69, the Rasmussen case remained a mystery. The DNA clue, although significant, was like a lone piece of a complex puzzle, waiting for the other pieces to be found and assembled. Perhaps because of the lack of a direct connection to a suspect, Butterworth's report ended up being filed away in the Rasmussen case file. The case itself, carrying with it the silent plea for justice from Sherry Rasmussen, was placed back on the shelf, and there it would remain, in limbo for a few more years, its secrets yet to be fully uncovered, and its mysteries still waiting to be solved. And so the story continued, with the truth lurking just out of reach, and the quest for justice pressing on, undeterred by the passage of time. As the calendar turned to early 2007, Detective David Lampkin, the pioneering leader of the LAPD's cold case homicide unit, decided that it was time to retire. Under his leadership, the unit had achieved remarkable success, solving more than 40 previously unsolvable old murder cases. Wow! More than 40, that is remarkable. When Detective David Lampkin departed, the mantle of responsibility for the cold case unit fell to Robert Bubb, another seasoned homicide detective. Detective Bubb inherited a team of 10 detectives and approximately 120 open cases. The cold case unit had been relocated to a marginally more spacious squad room on the 5th floor of Parker Center, the LAPD's infamously run-down headquarters. Despite the move, from a janitorial closet no less, space remained a precious commodity, and the unit found itself unable to accommodate the burgeoning number of murder books it had amassed. In an effort to manage this issue, detectives made the decision to box up cases that were not actively being investigated. These box files were then sent back to their respective divisions, provided there was sufficient space, or otherwise they were relegated to the archives of the LAPD. The Sherry Rasmussen case file, with all its complexities and unresolved questions, found itself in one such cardboard box, making its way back to the Van Nuys division in 2007. In a twist of fate, Detective Bubb would follow the trail of this case, accepting a transfer in March 2008 to lead the Van Nuys homicide unit, which had recently been depleted by the retirement of its supervising detective and 2 others. Bubb, alongside detectives Pete Barbara, Mark Martinez, and Jim Nuttall, formed the new team. By 2009, the landscape of crime in Van Nuys had changed significantly. What used to be 30 to 40 homicides a year had been reduced to an average of 5 to 7. Detective Bubb found this to be, quote, a very manageable number of murders for 3 guys to work, unquote. In February 2009, with their most recent case closed, Detectives Nuttall and Barba decided to delve into the cold cases, searching for a challenge. Their attention was drawn to the Sherry Rasmussen case. Detective Nuttall, upon receiving the case file, noted its considerable size. It was 4 books when it reached me, 4 books deep, he recalled. The case file, meticulously maintained over 23 years, provided a comprehensive chronological record of the investigation. As Detective Nuttall scrutinized the contents of the file, he came upon the 2005 DNA analysis report. The gender marker stood out starkly, in glaring contradiction to the original theory of the case. The DNA suggested a female perpetrator, not the 2 male burglars initially suspected. Quote, that jumps off the page at you, unquote, Nuttall reflects, recognizing the pivotal nature of this discovery. You have to go back to square one, he said. Thus began a new chapter in the investigation of the Sherry Rasmussen murder as detectives prepared to unravel the mystery anew, armed with the knowledge that they were possibly searching for a female assailant. The search for truth and justice was rekindled, and the quest to solve this decades-old case took on a renewed sense of urgency and determination. The detectives, armed with a new perspective and a resolute determination to uncover the truth, painstakingly revisited the entire investigation, this time with a fresh pair of eyes looking for a female suspect. Their thorough examination of the case file resulted in a list of 5 names, potential suspects who might hold the key to solving the mysterious case. Among these names was Stephanie Lazarus, previously mentioned in the original police investigation as John Rutan's ex-girlfriend. A small, seemingly innocuous notation was next to her name, and it read, quote, P.O. unquote. Detective Nuttall, initially oblivious to the significance of these initials, decided to reach out to John Ruetten for clarification. Ruetten's revelation was nothing short of staggering. Stephanie Lazarus was not just an ex-girlfriend, she was a Los Angeles police officer. The enormity of this discovery was not lost on Nuttall. The idea that a fellow officer could be capable of such a heinous crime was jarring and an unsettling realization. Quote, "It was extremely difficult initially to process that possibility," unquote, Nuttall admitted, grappling with the implications of this new lead. Compelled to verify Lazarus's current status, the detectives turned to the LAPD's internal directory. There, to their astonishment, was Detective Stephanie Lazarus, still actively serving on the force. Nuttall wasted no time in contacting his superior, Detective Bub, to relay this critical piece of information. He recounted how Nels Rasmussen had raised suspicions about a police officer ex-girlfriend years ago, suspicions that now resurfaced with renewed urgency. The list of suspects compiled by the detectives was numbered 1 through 5. Despite the apparent connection and the looming shadow of suspicion, Stephanie Lazarus was placed at the bottom of the list, deemed the least likely suspect, and designated as suspect number 5. The irony of the situation was palpable. A member of their own rank, sworn to protect and serve, was now under the microscope, her past entanglements and possible motives subject to scrutiny. The detectives stood at the precipice of a daunting and potentially groundbreaking phase in the investigation as they prepared to delve deeper into the life and history of Stephanie Lazarus, unsure of what secrets and revelations lay in wait. The detectives of the Van Nuys squad approached the Sherry Rasmussen case with an extraordinary level of discretion and determination, establishing 2 crucial agreements amongst themselves. Firstly, they pledged to maintain an impenetrable cloak of secrecy, ensuring that neither the name Stephanie Lazarus or any discussions surrounding her would be exposed to prying ears or eyes. They were acutely aware of the potential repercussions. On the one hand, they risked tarnishing the reputation of a fellow officer, and on the other, they risked alerting her in case she was actually involved in the crime. Secondly, they committed to an unflinching pursuit of the truth, vowing to let the evidence guide their investigation regardless of where it might lead. Quote, "This was not a random act of violence towards Sherry Rasmussen," unquote, Nuttall reflected, emphasizing the gravity of their task. "Somebody on that list committed this crime," he said. The investigation pressed on quickly, and the Van Nuys detectives ruled out 3 of the 5 women on their list, determining that they lacked sufficient motive to inflict harm upon Sherry Rasmussen. This critical investigation left them with 2 remaining suspects, Stephanie Lazarus and another woman, a fellow nurse who had reportedly had sporadic confrontations with Sherry at the hospital. "We were teetering," Bub recalled, acknowledging the precarious nature of their investigation. The information at their disposal suggested that the relationship between Lazarus and John Ruetten had concluded the previous summer, leaving them without any concrete evidence of animosity. The previous summer to Sherry's murder, that is. In their relentless quest for answers, the detectives chose to investigate the nurse first, aiming to either confirm or eliminate her as a potential suspect. They managed to trace her to Northern California, and Bub coordinated with the local law enforcement to discreetly collect a DNA sample from her. In mid-April, a little over 2 months into the renewed investigation, the DNA report came back, yielding a negative result. The list of suspects had now been whittled down to a single name: Stephanie Lazarus. The detectives found themselves at a critical juncture, the weight of the investigation now squarely resting on their shoulders as they prepared to navigate the delicate and complex task of investigating one of their own. The quest for justice for Sherry Rasmussen had led them to an unexpected and unprecedented crossroads, and the path forward was fraught with challenges and uncertainties. Meticulously and systematically, the investigative team began to reconstruct the intricate web of connections between Stephanie Lazarus, John Ruetten, and Sherry Rasmussen, delving deep into the past to unravel the tangled history of their relationships. Lazarus and Ruetten's paths first crossed at the University of California, Los Angeles, where they both resided in the same dormitory and forged a close friendship. Their lives, it seemed, were on parallel tracks. Lazarus pursued a degree in political science, while Ruetten delved into the world of mechanical engineering. Both of them displayed a keen affinity for athletics and physical activity, an interest that likely played a key role in their initial bonding. Upon their graduation in the early 1980s, their relationship took a more intimate turn, evolving into an on-and-off-again romantic entanglement. In 1985, however, the dynamic shifted dramatically as Ruetten found love with Sherry Rasmussen, a rising star in the medical field who held the prestigious position of Director of Nursing at Glendale Adventist Medical Center. The couple's connection was undeniable, and they soon found themselves sharing an apartment in Van Nuys, blissfully navigating the waters of their blossoming relationship. Lazarus, on the other hand, was grappling with the shift in her relationship with Rutan. Despite her transition into a promising career with the LAPD, she struggled to let go of the emotional ties that bound her to Rutan. Her presence became a constant in John and Sherry's lives, an uninvited third wheel that cast a shadow of discomfort over Rasmussen. During a birthday party thrown in Rutan's honor by Lazarus, he disclosed the seriousness of his relationship with Rasmussen. The revelation left Lazarus heartbroken, prompting her to pen a poignant letter to Rutan's mother in 1985, saying, quote, "I'm truly in love with John, and the past year has really torn me up. I wish it didn't end the way it did, and I don't think I'll ever understand his decision," unquote. In an astonishing twist, Rutan later testified that prior to his marriage to Rasmussen, he and Lazarus engaged in an intimate encounter, a misguided attempt to provide Lazarus with closure. Yeah, whatever. Contrary to their hopes, this act only served to intensify Lazarus's attachment, leading her to insert herself even more prominently in their lives. John Rutan thought he could get his stalker to leave him and his new girlfriend alone by sleeping with her? Yeah, good plan, John. Good plan. As they sifted through the labyrinth of emotions and connections, the detectives could not help but feel the gravity, the emotional gravity of the situation, the palpable tension and unresolved feelings that lingered in the air, painting a vivid picture of a love triangle marred by jealousy, unrequited love, and a growing sense of desperation. In the face of Stephanie Lazarus's escalating infatuation, Sherry Rasmussen could not help but feel uneasy and alarmed. John Rutan attempted to allay Sherry's fears, emphasizing that his relationship with Lazarus was purely platonic. No, it wasn't. However, Lazarus's fixation only deepened, culminating in a chilling confrontation at Rasmussen's workplace, where Lazarus issued a stark warning, quote, "If I can't have John, no one else will," unquote. Rasmussen, grappling with her unease, chose to trust Rutan's reassurances, and the couple proceeded to tie the knot in November of 1985. They enjoyed a brief, idyllic period of marital bliss, oblivious to the storm that was brewing on the horizon. February 24th, 1986, marked a fateful turning point in their lives. Rasmussen, contemplating her mundane class schedule and nursing a recent back injury, decided to take a sick day. Rutan, none the wiser, headed off to work, leaving his wife at home. Hours later, when Rutan's attempts to reach Rasmussen went unanswered both at home and at her workplace, he couldn't shake the nagging feeling of concern. Yet he pressed on with his day, hoping that all was well. Upon his return home, Rutan met with a horrifying scene. The answering machine, typically activated daily, lay dormant. A bloody handprint stark against the wall near the panic button of the alarm told a story of desperation and struggle. The room was in disarray, littered with broken objects, a testament to the violence that had transpired. Meanwhile, Lazarus, a 26-year-old police officer in her third year with the LAPD, remained seemingly unscathed by the tumult. In the ensuing years, her career flourished. By 1993, she descended to the rank of detective, and in 1996, she found personal fulfillment in marriage to a fellow LAPD officer. Together, they adopted a little girl, building a life and a family. By 2006, Lazarus had secured a prestigious position in the department's art theft detail, a coveted post rare in the realm of Los Angeles police work. Throughout her lengthy and distinguished career, she maintained an unblemished record, free from any allegations of misconduct or involvement in any use of force incidents. As they delved into the narrative of Sherry Rasmussen's murder, detectives were faced with the daunting task of reconciling the Stephanie Lazarus of the past, a woman driven by obsession and capable of issuing sinister threats, with the respected officer and family woman she had become. The stark contrast between these two facets of her identity posed a significant challenge as the team endeavored to uncover the truth and seek justice for Sherry Rasmussen. The detectives from Van Nuys, unwavering in their determination, continued to unravel the threads of the perplexing case, each detail seemingly aligned to create a picture that was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Mark Martinez, an officer with a wealth of experience, noted that in the mid-1980s a .38 caliber firearm was a common choice for LAPD officers, both as a backup and for off-duty purposes. This was a significant truth, as the ballistics report from the Rasmussen murder indicated that a .38 caliber weapon had been used. Detectives decided to delve deeper, searching the California State Gun Registry for any firearms registered under Stephanie Lazarus's name. The search yielded results, including a .38 caliber firearm, which, in a spine-tingling coincidence, had been reported stolen just 13 days after Sherry Rasmussen's murder. Keen to gather more information, the detectives promptly obtained a copy of the stolen gun report. Lazarus had walked into the Santa Monica Police Department, identified herself as an LAPD officer, and reported that her vehicle, parked near the Santa Monica Pier, had been burglarized. She detailed the incident, describing how the lock on the driver's side door had been compromised and that a blue gym bag containing various items, including her Smith & Wesson 5-shot .38 revolver, had been taken. This stolen weapon posed a significant roadblock to the investigation. Without the firearm itself or a bullet confirmed to have been fired from it, proving or disproving that it was the weapon used in the Rasmussen murder was an impossibility. Meanwhile, Detective Nuttall had established communication with Nels Rasmussen, Sherry's father, whose intelligence and tenacity left a lasting impression. During their conversation, Nuttall implored Nels to recount every detail, to walk him through the entirety of the events from A to Z. Nels complied, revisiting the details he had shared with detectives back in 1986, including the ominous interactions between Sherry and a police officer who had previously been involved with John Rutan. Given the precarious nature of the investigation, with its delicate and potentially explosive implications, Nuttall treaded carefully, ensuring not to reveal too much. However, he assured Nels, "Give me time to do what I have to do, and I think maybe I'll be able to have an answer for you." In this, Nuttall acknowledged the gravity of the situation and the imperative need for diligence, all the while understanding the profound responsibility he carried to bring resolution and justice to the Rasmussen family. The progression of the investigation into Stephanie Lazarus as a cold case murder suspect brought the detectives to a critical juncture. A potential case of this magnitude, implicating an LAPD detective, would invariably find its way to the Robbery Homicide Division, known as RHD, an elite unit tasked with handling the most sensitive and high-profile murder investigations in the city. Bub, a seasoned investigator and a veteran of RHD, was acutely aware of the gravity of the situation. He was resolute in his commitment to presenting an impeccably prepared case to the division, leaving no room for error. A key element to building the case was obtaining a sample of Lazarus's DNA to compare with the swab taken from the bite mark found on the crime scene. The detectives had deliberated on the idea of acquiring the DNA sample surreptitiously. However, Bub noted, quote, "We kicked around the idea of doing it ourselves, doing surreptitious DNA, but recognized the complexities and potential pitfalls of such an undertaking. And the circumstances such as they were, there would have been too many variables involved and too much potential for a screw-up. So, we felt it best that if we're going to do this and hand the package to RHD, we're going to hand it to them with everything done correctly," unquote. With a clear course of action in mind, Bub took the next crucial step. He briefed his lieutenant in the Van Nuys division, effectively making him the first person outside of Bub's immediate unit to be made aware that an LAPD detective was now a subject in a cold case murder investigation. Swiftly, the captain of the Van Nuys division and the chief of the Valley Bureau were also brought into the loop. Bub underscored the uncertainty of the situation to his superiors, noting, "We explained that this could still turn out not to be her. There were some coincidences, sure, but there was nothing definitive for us at this point." Following this, a decision was made. Bub's unit would retain the case until Lazarus's DNA sample was obtained. And they started to plan just exactly how to do that. All right, we're going to stop there for today. But please do rejoin me this Sunday, November 5th, for the third and final part of Take the Beemer, Leave the Body, the Bullets, and the Bite Marks. Until then, I'm Zevin Odelberg, and this has been Kinda Murdery.